The village of Olorunmi was known for its fertile lands. The village had prospered for generations, but that year everything went wrong. First, the rain came late, and when it finally fell, it was accompanied by violent winds that flattened most of the crops. The river, which had always provided abundant fish, grew murky, and its banks were littered with dead fish. To make matters worse, an unusual sickness swept through the village. It started with fatigue, then headaches, followed by sudden fevers that left many bedridden. Elders whispered about curses and hungry spirits. Families huddled together, afraid to leave their homes at night. The village herbalist, Baba Gbenga, tried every remedy he knew, but the sickness persisted. The people grew desperate. It was during this period of despair that a stranger arrived in Olorunmi. He came at dusk, riding a bicycle and carrying a sack bag over his shoulder. He introduced himself as Pastor Emmanuel, a preacher traveling from village to village to spread the word of God and deliver people from their troubles. Pastor Emmanuel was tall and imposing, with a booming voice that commanded attention. His robes were immaculate, and he carried a well-worn Bible that he claimed had been blessed by a powerful prophet in the city. "Your village has been cursed," he declared during his first sermon. The villagers gathered in the central square gasped. "But fear not, the Lord has sent me to break these chains and restore your blessings." He spoke with such conviction that even the skeptics in the crowd felt a glimmer of hope. That evening, Pastor Emmanuel conducted a dramatic prayer section. He called out the sicknesses by name, rebuking it with fiery words. "Leave these people, you spirit of affliction," he shouted, his voice echoing into the night. The next morning, whispers of a miracle spread through the village. A young boy who had been bedridden for weeks suddenly recovered after attending the prayer section. His parents were overjoyed, and the story quickly reached every corner of Olorunmi. Emboldened by his success, more villagers flocked to Pastor Emmanuel's prayer meetings. They brought offerings of food, money, and livestock, believing it was a small price to pay for their salvation. The pastor's reputation grew, and soon he was no longer just a guest in the village, he became a figure of authority. But not everyone was convinced. Ayo, a sharp-witted young woman who had recently returned to Olorunmi after studying in the city, was the event of food with suspicion. She had heard stories of charlatans exploiting people's fears, and something about Pastor Emmanuel didn't sit right with her. "He is too good to be true," he told her childhood friend Shade one evening. They were sitting under the mango tree near Ayo's family compound. How can one man claim to solve problems that even Baba Gbenga couldn't fix? Shade, who had been attending the prayer sections, shrugged. "Maybe he really is sent by God. You saw how the boy recovered. Or maybe the boy was going to recover anyway," Ayo countered. "I just think we should be careful. Blind faith can be dangerous." Shade frowned but didn't argue further. As the weeks passed on, Ayo's unease grew. She noticed that the more people trusted Pastor Emmanuel, the more they gave him money, food, even land. Some families, already struggling, began neglecting their own needs to meet his demands. Then there were the strange occurrences. Ayo's neighbor, Mama Tayo, claimed that goats had gone missing shortly after Pastor Emmanuel visited her home to pray for prosperity. Another villager reported hearing unusual noises near the sacred grove, a place no one dared to enter because it was believed to be the dwelling place of the ancestors. One night, unable to sleep, Ayo sat by her window, staring into the darkness. She noticed a flickering light near the edge of the forest. Grabbing a shovel, she slipped out of the house and followed the light at a distance. To her astonishment, she saw Pastor Emmanuel entering the sacred grove, holding a lantern. He was muttering something under his breath, but she couldn't make out the words. Her heart pounding, Ayo hid behind a tree and watched as he disappeared into the grove. The next day, Ayo confided in Shade about what she had seen. What could he possibly be doing in the grove? She asked. Shade looked uneasy. Maybe he was praying. Praying in a place that is forbidden to everyone else? Ayo shook her head. Something isn't right, Shade. I am going to find out what it is. But when Ayo tried to bring up her concerns with others in the village, she was met with resistance. Pastor Emmanuel is a man of God, they told her. You shouldn't question him. That is dangerous. Even her home parents dismissed her. You have been in the city too long. Her mother said, you have lost touch with our ways. Feeling isolated, Ayo decided to take matters into her own hands. She began keeping a journal, documenting everything she observed about Pastor Emmanuel and the changes in the village. The situation reached a turning point when a prominent elder, Babakin, fell mysteriously ill. Pastor Emmanuel claimed it was the work of an evil spirit and performed a dramatic exorcism in front of the entire village. When Babakin recovered a few days later, the villagers' faith in the pastor was cemented. But Ayo wasn't convinced. She had overheard a conversation between Babakin's son and another villager, suggesting that the elder's illness had started shortly after Pastor Emmanuel visited their home. One evening, Ayo decided to follow the pastor again. This time she was more prepared, carrying a notebook and a small camera she had brought back from the city. As she trailed him, she saw him met with an old man near the grove, the same man the villagers had shunned for practicing traditional medicine. The two men exchanged something. Ayo couldn't see what, and performed a ritual that involved chanting and drawing symbols on the ground. When Ayo returned home, her hands were trembling. She now had more questions than answers. Why was the pastor associating with a man he publicly denounced as evil? And what was the purpose of the ritual they performed? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Ayo resolved to confront the old man directly. But deep down she knew she was trembling on a dangerous ground. As Ayo prepared for her confrontation, she found a dead chicken on her doorstep, a shrill warning to stay silent. Ayo stood frozen at her doorway, staring at the lifeless chicken lying on the dirt. Its feathers were drenched in blood, its neck bent unnaturally. She bent down slowly, noticing a piece of parchment tied around its leg. Her hands trembled as she untied it and unfolded the note. Stay silent, or you will share the same fate. A chill ran down her spine. Who had left it? And more importantly, how did they know she had been watching Pastor Emmanuel? She looked around nervously, but the street was deserted. The only sound were the distant chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the wind. She hurried back inside, bolted the door, and slid the chicken out of sight with her foot. That night, sleep eluded her. Her mind raced with questions and possibilities. She had always been brave, but now fear clouded at her resolve. She wanted to abandon her investigation, but every time she thought about the villagers blindly following Pastor Emmanuel, something inside her refused to back down. By morning, she had made her decision. She would confront the old man in the grove, no matter the risk. The next day, Ayo convinced Shade to accompany her. If anything happens to me, at least someone will know the truth, she explained. Shade hesitated but finally agreed. I don't like this, Ayo. What if we are walking into a trap? It's already a trap, Ayo replied grimly. We are just trying to survive it. They waited until dusk, then set off towards the grove. The village was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound seem amplified. The path to the grove was overgrown and barely visible in the fading light, but Ayo pressed forward with determination. When they reached the edge of the grove, the soft faint smoke rising through the trees, they crept closer, their footsteps muffled by the soft earth. In a small clearing, they found the old man sitting by a fire, muttering to himself. He was counting, his face lined with age and worry. "Who is there?" he called out suddenly, his voice sharp. Ayo stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We are not here to harm you," she said. "We just want answers." The old man squinted at her, then gestured for them to sit. "What answers do you ask?" Ayo didn't mind words. "We know you've been meeting with Pastor Emmanuel. We saw you performing rituals. What are you doing and why is he involved?" The old man sighed deeply, staring into the fire. "You don't understand the forces at play here," he said. "That man, he is not who he claims to be." The old man, who introduced himself as Baba Gbenga, began his tale. Years ago, he had been a respected herbalist in Olorunmi, known for his knowledge of traditional medicine. But when Pastor Emmanuel arrived, he had accused Baba Gbenga of practicing witchcraft and turned the villagers against him. Desperate and ostracized, Baba Gbenga retreated to the grove. A few months later, Pastor Emmanuel sought him out. To Baba Gbenga's shock, the pastor offered him a deal. "Help me stage miracles in exchange for protection and resources." He needed me to create the problems he claimed to solve, Baba Gbenga said bitterly. "I would poison the river with herbs that made the fish sick or brew up potions that caused mild illness. Then he would come in, pray, and take the credit for curing them." Ayo's stomach turned. "Why did you agree to it?" "I had no choice," Baba Gbenga said. "He threatened to expose me as a witch and have me executed. And he is not working alone. He has connections, dangerous ones." Shade gasped. "So the sickness in the village is all fake?" "Not all of it," Baba Gbenga admitted. "Some of it is real, but he amplifies it to maintain control. It thrives on fear and desperation." As Baba Gbenga spoke, Ayo felt a surge of anger. The villagers were suffering because of one man's greed and deceit. She knew she had to expose Pastor Emmanuel, but how? The villagers were too blinded by his miracles to believe the truth. "We need evidence," she said finally. "Something undeniable that the villagers can't ignore." Baba Gbenga nodded. "I have records of every deal I made with him. Letters, receipts, even some of the shams he uses. But they are hidden in a cave deeper in the grove. If he finds out I have betrayed him, he will kill me." "We will get them," Ayo said firmly. The journey to the cave was harrowing. Baba Gbenga led them through winding paths and dense underbrush, constantly looking over his shoulder. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until the only light came from a small lantern Baba Gbenga carried. When they reached the cave, Ayo felt a sense of foreboding. The entrance was narrow and jagged, and the air inside was damp and heavy. Baba Gbenga searched through a hidden compartment and pulled out a leather-bound book, several papers, and a small box filled with shams. "These are the proof you need," he said, handing them to Ayo. But as they prepared to leave, they heard voices outside the cave. Ayo's heart stopped. "It is him," Baba Gbenga whispered, his face pale. Thinking quickly, Ayo shoveled the evidence into her bag and motioned for Shade to follow her deeper into the cave. Baba Gbenga hesitated, then followed. They pressed themselves against the cold, damp walls, holding their breath as the voices grew louder. "We know you are in there," a man shouted. "Come out or we will drag you out." Ayo's mind raced. If they were caught, they'd be killed without questions. She looked around desperately and noticed a narrow road in the back of the cave. "This way," she whispered, leading the others through the tiny road. The passage was tight, and they had to move slowly, but eventually they emerged on the other side of the grove. They ran until they were sure they weren't being followed. When they reached safety, Papa Gbenga looked at Ayo with newfound respect. "You are braver than I thought," he said. Ayo didn't feel brave. Her hands were still shaking and her heart was pounding, but she knew there was no turning back now. "We have the evidence," she said, holding up her bag. "Now we just need to convince the village." But as they made their way back, Ayo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The journey back to the village was eerily quiet. Ayo, Sade, and Papa Gbenga moved swiftly, avoiding well-trodden paths to ensure they weren't seen. Ayo's bag, heavy with evidence, seemed to grow heavier with every step, but she clutched it tightly as if it were her lifeline. When they finally reached Ayo's compound, they slipped inside and bolted the door. But Papa Gbenga sat down heavily, wiping his brow. "You don't know what you have done, child," he said. "Exposing that man won't be easy. He has the whole village under his spell." "We have to try," Ayo replied. Her voice was steady, but her mind was whirlwind of doubt. Sade looked at the bag. "What is our next move?" Ayo sat down and began sorting through the evidence. There were letters written in Pastor Emmanuel's handwriting, detailing payments he had made to Papa Gbenga for various illnesses. There were shams used to poison the river and livestock, and even Elijah listing the names of villagers who had given him money and property. "This," Ayo said, holding up the Elijah, "is what we open their eyes. When they see how much is taken from them, they will have no choice but to question him." The next morning, Ayo and Sade began spreading the word secretly. They spoke to villagers they trusted, sharing small pieces of the evidence to get their reactions. To their dismay, most people dismissed them. "You are just jealous of the pastor's power," one woman said. "Be careful, Ayo," another warned. "Speaking against a man of God is dangerous." Even Sade's own parents scolded her for getting involved. "This is not your fight," her mother said. "Leave it alone before you bring trouble to our family." Despite the setbacks, Ayo refused to give up. "We need a public confrontation," she told Sade, "something that will force everyone to pay attention." Ayo decided to use Pastor Emmanuel's next prayer section as the stage for their revelation. The session was scheduled for the coming Sunday, and nearly the entire village would be present. She and Sade spent the next few days preparing. They copied key pieces of evidence to share with the crowd, carefully hiding the originals. Papa Gbenga agreed to stay hidden until the right time. But as the day approached, strange things began happening. Ayo's family chickens were found dead in their cages. Their necks twisted. Sade's father fell mysteriously ill, and her mother warned her to stay away from Ayo. The final straw came when Ayo's youngest brother, Tunde, went missing. After hours of frantic searching, he was found near the river, frightened and crying. "A man said he did hurt you if you don't stop," he whispered to Ayo. Sunday arrived, and the villagers gathered in the central square for Pastor Emmanuel's prayer section. He stood on a makeshift stage, his booming voice commanding attention as he spoke of faith and miracles. Ayo and Sade stood at the back, their hearts pounding. Ayo clutched a folder containing the evidence, her palms sleek with sweat. When Pastor Emmanuel called for testimonies of his miracles, Ayo stepped forward. "Pastor, I have a testimony," she said, her voice ringing out clearly. The crowd turned to look at her, murmurs ripping through the square. Pastor Emmanuel smiled, though his eyes were cold. "Come forward, my child." Ayo climbed onto the stage, her legs trembling. She took a deep breath and held up the ledger. "This is my testimony," she said. "This ledger contains the names of every person you have taken money and property from under false pretenses. This is proof that you've been deceiving us." Gaps filled the air. and the pastor's smile disappeared. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice raising. Ayo turned to the crowd. "He is not a man of God. He is a fraud. He's been working with Baba Gbenga to create the very problems he claims to solve." The villagers erupted into chaos. Some shouted in support of Ayo, while others accused her of blasphemy. Pastor Emmanuel raised his hands, calling for silence. "This is the work of the devil," he thundered. "She is trying to sow doubt and division among us. Do you not let her succeed?" Ayo refused to back down. She handed the ledger to an elder and began reading aloud some of the entries. "Here, he took Mama Tayo's goods. Here, he took land from Baba Akin. And here, he took 50,000 naira from Baba Ade." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, and some people began to turn against the pastor. Shade stepped forward, holding up one of the shams. "These are the shams he used to poison the river and make people sick." The tension reached its peak when Baba Gbenga emerged from the crowd. He looked nervous but determined. "Everything she's saying is true," he declared. "I helped him, but only because he forced me to. He is not man of God. He is a liar and a thief." Faced with mounting evidence and testimony, Pastor Emmanuel grew desperate. He tried to flee, but the villagers blocked his path. "Explain yourself," shouted one man. "Give back what you have stolen," demanded another. Cornered, the pastor fell to his knees, raising his hands in a mock display of repentance. "I only did what I thought was best for the village," he cried. "Everything I took was to fund the work of God." But the villagers were no longer listening. Anger and betrayal filled the air. Pastor Emmanuel was stripped of his authority. The villagers stormed his residence to recover some of the belongings they had given him. Pastor Emmanuel was banished from the village, never to return. The end. Please let me know what you think about this story in the comment section. Please comment your thoughts. Do you like the story? Let me know if you like it or not. And please like, share. Please, if you're here to subscribe to my channel, please. Thank you very much. See you in my next story. Bye.